Excellent. So hopefully we won't get Zoom bombed. I hear that's the latest thing too, where they have people streaking through your Zoom session and pretending they have Tourette's or some other problem and showing inappropriate graphic data. Well, I don't know. So I'm also told by some people that the students like that better than regular class material. So we'll see how it goes. So anybody have any questions on anything? So I was going to go over a little bit of the homework from chapter 1, 2. I guess it looks like. Does anybody know if the weather's going to clear up ever? Kind of looking forward to some warm weather again. So, here at the Golden Gate Bridge. Well, let me see. Where were we? Share. Oh, yeah. So I don't know. Can you see anything?
Yes.
Does it say construction project scheduling and control?
Yes, it does.
That says part 4, though. That's not the one I want. So let's see if we can shrink that back down. Part 3, part 2, part 1. Okay, does it say part 1 now?
Yes.
All right, good. Then we've got something. So this was from chapter 1. I just want to go through it kind of quick to get us all more or less in the same spot, I hope. So this is supposedly about scheduling and planning. As you may have noticed that with the coronavirus, it's kind of screwed up a bunch of schedules. So, and we'll probably continue to do so. Well, we'll see what happens when we all get back. But I think that just tells us what we're going to do. So, if you have any questions, concerns, chime in. We're just going to zip through this part. So types of management, there are different types, operational. So we have general management, specialty management, financial, human resources, IT, etc. I think my daughter was dealing directly with the human resources folks this morning. They were a call and said, hey, we got some bad news and some good news. The bad news is you're laid off. The good news is we're going to continue to provide you with health benefits for the time being. So program management, portfolio management. So if we're doing more than one project, we may have a series of projects that fall into a program, or they may fall into a portfolio, but they're all part of project management. So that part doesn't change too much. You should know from the Project Management Institute, they have a definition of what a project is. I think they underlined a couple things here. It's a temporary endeavor undertaken to create a unique product, service, or result. So all of you do projects. All of you are project managers already. If you're not happy with the results, then you may want to get better at it. So sometimes it's beyond your control. Other times it's a direct result of your decisions, whether or not it's going well or not going well. We did mention that projects have to have a start and an end. and some sort of deliverable, something that we have to provide as part of the project. So we'll be talking a little bit about the application of knowledge, skills, tools, and techniques to project activities. Hopefully deliver what we're supposed to. And so if you've been around a long time, you've got experience. Some of that knowledge comes from experience, some comes from training. You probably have also learned some skills. If you have a smartphone, a computer, some software you're more familiar with than others. You may be able to get along with people. You may not be able to get along with people. That's a skill too. Tools. So we've got computers and smartphones and iPads and hammers and all kinds of different things that we're using. And then we have some methodology or technique that we can apply these things to in order to hopefully get a desired result. We don't care about all of that stuff right there, I don't think. So we do have the 5 basic processes involved in project management. Initiation or initiating processes. There are the actual planning processes. There's those processes that we use for executing or accomplishing the actual work. Somebody's got to keep an eye on the shop. So that's monitoring and controlling. You keep an eye on things. And if they're not going the way that you think they should, then you normally need to take some sort of controlling action to correct it. And then at the tail end, we got to close things out. So, and I am in this day of the coronavirus and Zoom meetings, I think I'm working on an app that allows you to check in, but also times you so that it will check you out automatically. So that way I don't know that, you know, some people just log in and then go out and do their grocery shopping, go to the beach and do things like that. So I'll come back at midnight and it looks like they're still in the class, and I know that. So, what do we got here? So, project management, they say, is experimental, empirical science. So, observations, trial and error, and expert opinions. And so opinions are exactly that. Given the same set of facts, 2 different people who might be considered experts may come to 2 completely different conclusions based on their past experience with similar problems. There are guidelines and standards these days. We call those BMPs in many cases, best management practices or accepted practices. There are certain ways of doing things that have been codified or written down and are accepted as being the normal thing to do in a certain situation, but they don't always apply. Now, they do tell you that there is no magic single solution for all problems. Although if any of you have that magic single solution for all problems other than death, let me know. So, anybody out there?
Hello.
Okay. Program management, blah, 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 blah. So, and so we have programs and portfolios. So you normally have individuals or somebody assigned a team to a particular project. And then if you have more than one project, it may be in either a program or a portfolio. And so they talk about that in chapter 1. So a portfolio may include a couple of programs. So, and usually you're getting paid more money. The more responsibility you have, the greater your span of control. The more headaches you have, normally the better you get paid. Sub-project. So sometimes we're assigned either a team or a person to sub-project. You're responsible to get building permits for the project, for example. So somebody may be put in charge of that. That's a sub-project of a larger construction project, but you may be involved in that. We don't care about that right now. So looked a little bit at the hierarchy. So there's a picture out of your book. And so if you have any questions on any of these pictures, they're some project objectives. And so normally we're looking at budget, time, quality. So, but we have some additional ones. These days you have to follow the law. So we have environmental concerns, and project safety is also a big part of most project objectives now. Oh yeah, there they are. And the more objectives and the more constraints that you have on a particular project, the more complex it becomes and the more difficult it is to keep all the little balls you're juggling in the air at the same time. So life cycles. So all projects go through a life cycle. You know, for an owner, it may be the whole thing here. If you're a designer, you may have a much smaller project, have a piece of it. So a little bit depends on your role and what you're assigned to do. A big problem in construction projects is a lot of times we hire an architect to do the work. And then as soon as the plans are approved or we get our building permit, we don't want to pay them anymore, so we get rid of them. And then as a project manager, you have a question on some design facet. Yes, and you call the architect up and they said, my duties have been discharged, so you can either write me a new contract and start paying me or go away, please, because I'm not going to get involved for free. So, these are the things that project management in construction includes. And so one of the big ones are the environmental requirements and the financial management, but these are all things involved in construction project management, although hopefully on a bigger project, the project manager has a team of people to help with these things, or there's a company or a corporate structure where you have specialists that deal with things like risk management, insurance, those sorts of things, procurement management, you know, buying stuff, logistics management, change management, change orders. A lot of times the project manager has limited authority for change orders. And if they go over a certain dollar amount, then they usually have to go to their boss and get approval for a change, particularly if it has cost or time implications relative to the project. Document management is a big headache for a lot of people. Usually the documentation on most projects is incomplete. Quality management. So if you have any questions on any of those, you should ask.
What is HSE?
HSE.
One right under quality.
Yeah. I'll have to look that one up. I don't remember offhand, but I think that's the health. Oh, that's health, safety, and environmental.
Oh. Thank you.
that we were talking about. And I think the other S, HSSE, I think it's health, safety, security, and environmental. As on some jobs, you do have some security issues.
Oh, right. Yeah. Okay.
You're working on an airport project, you've got all that TSA stuff that you have to deal with,
Right.
and so there's a whole series of management constraints on something like that. But that's one of the things these days that makes things more complicated. So they do make a distinction in the book between planning and scheduling. Scheduling is a subset of planning. So they are not the same thing. Scheduling is part of the planning effort. So scheduling, according to your book, is the identifying all the tasks that need to be done and then deciding how long they're going to take and in what order they're going to occur. I think there should be a comma after of, but so project planning, and this comes from Project Management Institute, the comprehensive process of thinking of and preparing for the activities and actions needed to successfully complete a project. So they talk about a bunch of other things in here. Usually, when you're given a project, somebody else has already established what the contract structure is, and that has a big impact on how you're going to proceed to the project. The delivery method, what they're talking about there is, are we doing a traditional design it, put it out to bid, select a contractor, and then build it? So that's one delivery method. They have turnkey, where you just turn it over to a contractor or a contract design team, just tell them basically what you want and they do the whole thing. So that's one method. Fast track is another one, where we start building before we're completely finished with the design. So there are lots of different delivery methods for bringing about a project from start to finish. We don't care about that too much. So it says here that planning is the foundation for several related functions. So you got to have a plan for everything you're going to do, basically. There's always going to be a few things you don't anticipate or that don't go the way you want it to. And you're going to have to do things on the fly. But most of the big items related to project management, you should have a plan for. Yeah, we don't. So I think we covered that. Yeah, so that last bullet there, the plan can take different shapes and have different contents depending on the purpose of the plan, the timing of the plan, and the level of details needed. So, you know, if the bank just wants an overview of what's going on, you're going to give them a completely different plan information than what you need to manage the job on a day-to-day basis with your superintendent through your subs. And hopefully, whatever planning you've done, usually the owner requires a plan before you start. Typically in the contract, they need to approve that plan. And once you get their buy-in, then that's what they're relying on in terms of their expectations for what you're doing on the job. So all the project participant needs to do their own planning. So if you're a tradesperson, you still got to figure out what time you got to get up, how you're going to get to work, and what you're going to do once you get there. So everybody needs to be a part of it. So sometimes I measure 3 times and cut once, or don't cut at all. So risk management, which we have not talked too much about, but we will get into risk management a little bit because there's always risk. And that has been brought home by, certainly by this coronavirus. So we'll see how that goes. Though my sister-in-law and brother-in-law, they like to gamble, so they're suffering from something called the coronavirus. We talked a little bit about this graph. The important thing here is your ability to influence the design or influence the course of a project drops off very quickly as you start to finish the job. So early on, you have the ability to change everything. Once you get to the end, you have the ability to change nothing. And the cost, as you can see here, the cost of changes in the beginning, if you look at that green line, can you see this?
Yes.
Okay. So at the beginning, you can see that the cost of changes is relatively low. But again, as you get toward the end of the cycle for the project, the costs go way, way up. It gets very, very expensive even to make minor changes in many cases. So you'd like to, as a good manager, you need to anticipate, look to the future, and hopefully do things while they're cheap rather than waiting until they get really expensive, at which point often you don't do anything because people don't want to spend the money. I don't know what happened there. We got a problem. Isn't that nice? So, who and what? Who's responsible? What are we supposed to be doing? So these are questions you should be prepared to answer. Because if you're the project manager or you're a superintendent or you're a foreman or even a worker, these are the questions you're going to get on a job site. What are you doing? And what should you never, ever say?
I don't know.
Either I don't know or nothing. So quite often I go out and people say nothing. I said, if you're doing nothing, why are we paying you? So always have an answer for what are you doing? And then how are you doing? Normally people just say fine. Who's responsible? In construction, it's everybody but me. So you're going to be doing a lot of finger pointing. But these are the questions you're going to get. We need to make a change or something is screwed up. How much does it cost? And then we want to know who's going to pay for it. And how's it going to get done? And what happened? So the same thing with why, where, by whom, when. Those are all general terms, but these are common questions that every single person is going to get asked, and you should think about it when you're on the job so you have some sort of an answer. So if somebody says, what are you doing? Say, I'm planning my next move. We're waiting for the quality control guy. Something. Just don't say, what are you doing? Nothing. Anyway, I know what that's in there for. That doesn't need to be there. So, planning and scheduling. So, this big thing, I don't know what color that is, kind of yellowish tan, but anyway, that's the plan. That's the big plan. The schedule, or how things are to be done, the sequence, that's a small subset of the total plan, because there's a whole bunch of things we have to do. Oh yeah, why do owners schedule projects? Well, number one, they want to know when they're going to be done. And so the reasons for that are they give you a list here. Because usually the first thing somebody's going to ask once they find out you've started something is, when are you going to finish? Why do contractors schedule? Again, this is all out of your book, chapter 1. So we want to make sure we can meet our deadlines. We'd like to have an efficient work plan. We want to be able to coordinate effectively with the subs. We need to predict how we're going to spend money and how we're going to collect money. See if they match up, and if they don't, we need to figure out how to fix that. We're going to be making preparation of progress payment request for project control. We want to be able to figure out if there is a change order, what it's going to affect in the schedule, and how big that effect is going to be. If we have to go to court or need to argue over something, I don't know, has there ever been an argument on a construction site over something? No, no way. But if you have a claim for delay, then the original schedule or the updated schedule is often what you're going to use as a basis for that argument. And then you need to figure out, you need to make sure you have the materials you need, and the quantity you need, and the quality you need, and the location that you need in order for work to start. And in order to do that, you need to have a schedule, because some things you can buy and other things, I don't know, a lot of places are shut down now. You can't get things. So that's a problem. Now, something like this coronavirus probably going to be considered either force majeure or act of God. You know, it's beyond most people's control. So if they shut you down, or you get repurposed, what I think General Motors and Ford were told to go make ventilators. Quit making cars, go make ventilators. So something like that, that impacts the entire supply chain. Cash flow, and again, we got a little graph here. So all they're trying to show is we're spending money faster than we thought. This was the target, I think, right here, this S curve. That's what they refer to as an S curve. It looks like a shallow, flattened S at an angle. And so if this is cash flow, if it's cash flow in, and we were expecting to be here at this middle line, and we've got our money early, that's not bad. If we're here down below this dotted line, that means that we're behind, we don't have enough money, we may have a cash flow problem. So, and I know nobody here has ever had a cash flow problem. Cash flow in and out, this is typically, again, we looked at this graph once before. The red line is spending, so we're spending. We don't have these steps, but these are the monthly pay requests. So normally on a larger job, you're getting paid monthly, and you get a certain amount of money for the month, which is why it's flat. And then the next month, you get a big infusion for your next billing. And then you get nothing again. And then you got another infusion at the next check that you get. And so that's how the money comes in. You will notice in this particular graph, where are we? At any point from here to the beginning, what's our financial situation?
In the hole.
That is exactly right. We're in the hole. So if anybody's never been in the hole, not a good spot.
Yeah.
But
You're looking forward to that last billing.
yeah, so you're looking forward to the last billing, which is why preparing for closeout is so important, because by the end of the job, you're usually in the hole. You need your last payment, which usually means you need a notice of completion so that you can get out of the hole and hopefully be above ground at that point. Anyway, these are just all different stakeholders in the project that need to schedule, because they got to figure out what they're doing. Many things in a project aren't really completely designed until the contract has been awarded, right? You have they talk about AE, that's architect engineering. So you put a mechanical system out to bid, you get 3 to 5 or maybe more bidders on that job. They're all planning to give you a price, but it's based on the way they're planning on building that project. Usually there's some design. So a mechanical contractor, for example, can do design build type work. So they may modify it a little bit. You may have to get approvals from the architect or the engineer, and you need to know how that's going to fit into the schedule so you don't hold up the process. The same with all these other folks. So lending institutions, if you're borrowing money or they're releasing money, they want to know about how the cash flow is going to be. You've got licensing and permitting issues. You may have some attorneys involved. You got other people. They all need to know a little bit about the schedule so they know when their input is needed or when they have to act. The scheduler, so I don't know. So they got a bunch of things. Who are they? I don't know. It talks about, so usually if you're using a bigger program, it's just somebody that knows how to manipulate the program. The data is given to the scheduler by somebody else in most cases. On smaller projects, the superintendent or the project manager may be doing the scheduling too. But typically, more typically, you'll have somebody else that's actually doing the basic input output. Project manager, superintendent are just saying, I need this report, I need that report. And they're relying on somebody to put it together for them. So hopefully they're decent at communication, because it's the schedule that needs to be communicated to the workers and the subs. Talk about 3 types of knowledge the scheduler should have. So you should know about the principles of scheduling and project control. You should know a little bit about the specific technical field that the job involves. You have to have some computer skills with regards to the software. And, you know, depending on what kind of job it is and what kind of software you're using, there may be greater emphasis on one versus the other. For project scheduling, the 2 most common, probably Microsoft Project, which is relatively inexpensive, and then Primavera P6, which is relatively expensive. Knowledge, where do you get it? Education or experience? Hopefully you've got a little bit of both. You should know how to do things and you should know why you're doing them. If you picked it up all by experience, that's great. But most people don't. I've never learned everything I needed to know about a job on the job. I've always had to invest some additional time. And then, you know, full-time or part-time consultants, bringing in consultants. Sometimes you find the consultants are no better than you are, in which case you're just spending money for no good purpose. Just another little picture, just a graphic to try and give you a better feeling for what's going on. We're going to have some sort of scheduling system. There's a human factor. There's the technology involved, which is usually these days computers, cameras. Many construction sites, they set up a construction camera now. It either takes continuous pictures or takes still photos periodically through the day or through the week, so that other people can keep an eye on it. And then whatever management support system you've got in place. And again, little projects, not so much. Big projects, you may have all kinds of stuff.
Hi, teacher. Can I have a question?
Yes, you can anytime you want.
Yes, please. There was a question in the quiz say there were 3 types of knowledge that a scheduler needs.
Yep.
And which one is the most important and which one is the least important?
That depends on the job. Depends on what the job calls for. So, you know, I would say, you know, if it's a simple job and not too complicated, you know, knowledge of the specific technical field, probably not that big a deal. But if you're doing a high-tech biotechnology place or a computer chip fabrication plant that has clean rooms and very involved mechanical system, then you probably need somebody with some technical knowledge and experience. If it's, you know, run-of-the-mill tenant improvement type stuff, steel studs and drywall, you don't need a huge amount of technical expertise. And again, the knowledge in computer software depends on what your clients want or what the company expects. If you're using Microsoft Project, that doesn't take a great deal of time to learn how to get a basic schedule or a basic report out of. But if you're using it to its full advantage, you're going to invest a lot of time in that. And then in terms of principles of scheduling and project control, again, depends on the length and sophistication of the project and what your contract requires of you. But, you know, most people have some basic understanding of scheduling, or you wouldn't be able to go out and come back and make it home in a reasonable time. I mean, we all schedule. So.
Oh,
I usually
got it. Thank you.
Okay. I mean, my belief is that all of you are capable of doing schedule. You know, almost anybody can do almost anything if they're given the opportunity and a little bit of support. So.
Yep.
Let's see, we almost done here? Oh, yeah. So these are just, they say some myths, misconceptions about scheduling. I should get an accurate schedule. I bought the most expensive software in the market. And I've seen people go out and buy the most expensive software in the market or a subscription and then not use it because they couldn't figure it out. They didn't have the time. You can hire a specialist, but again, Is it appropriate if you're doing a remodel? Doing the schedule by hand on graph paper may be more than adequate using bar charts. Why is the dog barking at me? Just a moment. All righty. So, and you can try and do it all in your head, and that's great. But if you're required to provide paperwork, documentation, backup, etc., which many contracts will require, then you can't keep it all in your head because there's no way to get it out of your head and out to the people that need it in a form that they require. So that was all that. I got a little quiz at the end of this. I've got some, can these things be considered projects? Now, you're supposed to be doing the review questions, I believe, at the end of this, correct? I'm not hearing anything.
Hi, I think that we did that on the second day of the class.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you give out that, and then I submitted it.
Okay. So you probably have. Okay. So now let me see if I can find. Oh, yeah. I just wanted to see some faces. You guys doing okay?
Yeah, we're doing okay.
Okay. I'm glad to. Uh-oh. Okay, quit beating the baby. Let's take a quick look at some of the homework from chapter 1. We can kind of go over that, I think. I don't know. What do you see? Anybody out there?
Yes,
You see the first slide?
yes. The chapter 1 exercise.
Yes. Is that what you see?
Exercise 1.
Okay.
Yeah, got that.
Excellent. So the question was define planning and scheduling to differentiate between the two terms. For this one, I will put something together and send it out to you. But like I say, this is the definition out of the book on what it is. Project planning, comprehensive process of thinking. So you're supposed to think the whole thing through. Preparing for the activities, which is the actual bits of work that need to be done, and the actions needed to successfully get those activities done. And so that part you should have. So what we do is we have a lot of different ways we could build any project, but project planning is the process of choosing the one method and order of work to be adopted for a project from all of the different ways and sequences in which we could do it. Frequently, we will have to change as we move through. So, anybody have any questions on that? concerns? Scheduling, like I said, is a part of planning. So it's a determination of the timing and sequence of operations for the project. Excellent. So what's the definition of a project? We covered that early on. Anybody remember?
It has a start and a finish.
Has a start and a finish. What else?
It's a deliverable.
Yeah, you got a deliverable.
Oh my God.
So temporary endeavor. So our unique product, service, or result, that's the deliverable. Temporary means it has a start and a finish. And even if we're building the same thing over and over again, you know, we might be building a housing tract with 300 units in it. We might be building a particular model 25 times. Each one, though, will be a little bit different because of the fact it's occurring at a different time, slightly different lots, may have different soil, different weather, etc.
I have a question on this. On the reading, I think it was back on chapter 1, it talks about the difference between a project and a program.
Yeah.
So I know you're not addressing a program, but program will be more, it does kind of still have a start and a finish. It's just kind of ongoing for a longer period of time.
Yeah, program, normally we're looking at something over some specified period of time in terms of management. So we might have say if I'm a big builder like Lennar, and they build single family, they build multifamily, but they build them all over the US. So they would have individual project managers for each project typically. And then you might have a program. You might have somebody who's overseeing or in charge of a number of residential developments, say in the southeast or the southwest or the west, and that might be a program. They might have somebody else overseeing a number of multifamily projects, and those might be rolled into a program. And so the overall management of those and business objectives would be assigned generally to somebody higher up on the food chain, a vice president maybe, a regional manager, and the individual projects would more typically be assigned to project managers and superintendents. So I don't know if that helps or makes it worse.
No, it does help. Just another question. So I guess a lot of projects can be part of a program in theory, right?
Right, and so that's typically what you would have. Normally a program, you would take projects that might be related, or in some cases they might not be related, but they're put into a particular program for strategic purposes, and they're handled together or overseen by a person or a team as a group of projects that have some common goals to them.
Okay, thank you.
Like I said, a big builder, a lot of times that would be, you have a multi-family program, which is building apartments. You have a single family program where you're just doing individual little subdivisions. And then you might have a commercial program, which covers shopping centers and office buildings and things like that. So, anybody familiar with Murphy's Law? So, and then there's O'Toole's corollary. And O'Toole said that Murphy was an optimist. Exercise 3 was all about asking you if you could identify whether something was a project or not. And you can agree or disagree. It says repair a broken diesel generator. So do you think it's a project or not a project?
Could be.
Yeah, it could be. So it could be, but it's a little vague. It just says repair. So it doesn't give you a, a lot of the specifics are not there, but it could be a project. How about raising your kids to be the best?
It's a program.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that could be a program, but
Yeah, exactly.
so here it says it's not a project because there aren't any specific objectives. So it's vague and doesn't meet the criteria for a project unless you put some timelines, milestones, and specific goals. I don't know what be the best is. So, and hopefully you have something to work with. Well, one of my sons is still, he's been mad at me for 30 years because 30 years ago, he told me I was a terrible father, and I looked at him and said it was easier if you had something to work with. He's been mad at me ever since. So, but he's also the one that wanted to know if there was any guarantee that my parenting wasn't screwing him up. So who knows? How about cooking daily for my family?
Not if it's grilled cheese sandwiches.
Yeah, so according to this, it's not a project. If you were cooking a specific,
Sounds a little more like a program.
so if you were cooking a Thanksgiving dinner for
That's a project.
for a number, then that's a project because it's this is an ongoing process. Cooking daily is an ongoing process. So you're not providing a unique deliverable. So preparing for your son's wedding,
Absolutely.
yeah. But you still normally would need to put in some specifics in order for it to be a manageable project. So 3E was investing in the stock market. Again, this isn't considered to be a project because you need to set some objectives, type of investment, risk level, etc. So periodically back up data on my hard disk. So this is the same as cooking dinner every day. So a single backup. So if you're upgrading your computer, upgrading your operating software, then that particular backup you might consider. Otherwise, again, it's a process. It's something you're doing over and over again. Don't have a specific beginning or end. converting the garage to a playroom?
Yes, it is a project.
Probably illegal too.
Not if you have a permit, no.
Yeah, you need a permit, and you're probably getting rid of your off-street parking, and so now you're in trouble.
Has that been around for a long time, converting garages into studios?
As long as there have been garages, people have been converting them. So, and generally speaking, you can't legally park in your driveway in front of your house because legally you can't park within the front yard setback. And normally the driveway is within the front yard setback. So that can become a problem. So there is a definition, some examples of portfolios and programs. I'll send this out to you. So some of you may have looked at this, some of you may not have looked at it. They give the PMI. Everybody remember what PMI stands for? Anybody remember? Project Management Institute.
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 That's
So
what I said.
Yeah, they're the ones that have most of the language for project management. They have that copyrighted. So it's always something. That's all about portfolio. I can see we're quickly losing interest in that. So what's a project management plan? And again, they're using PMI terminology in your book. Everybody know what the PMBOK is? It's the KOBMP backwards, but it's the project management body of knowledge is what that stands for. And there's a book. I had a copy around here. I'll have to find it. But that's the Bible for project management from the PMI. So maybe we'll take a look at that at some point. But project management plan says it's a formal approved document used to guide both project execution and project control. So you have to have the stakeholder, primary stakeholder, the owners, buy-in. Usually that's contractually required anyway. So the primary uses of the project plan are to document planning assumptions and decisions, facilitate communication amongst the stakeholders, document approved scope, cost, and schedule baselines. And so what we've been talking about is putting together schedules, and we need a baseline schedule. And then it says that a project plan may be summary or detailed. So it depends on what you're trying to communicate. So an example of the things that are involved are listed here, typical things you would have in there. Again, this is all that stuff, who, what, when, where, and how much. Should all be in your project plan. And these are questions you're going to get asked, maybe if you go to an interview on project management. So talk about the continuous process of monitoring work progress, comparing it to a baseline, et cetera, et cetera. I'll let you read that. Everybody know what a variance is? talks about analyzing the variances. So those are differences between our baseline or what we originally assumed or predicted and what actually is occurring. So we can have positive variances, which means things are going our way. We can have negative variances, which means that things aren't going our way. And generally speaking, things get better and things get worse. They rarely, if ever, stay exactly the same day to day. So your life is either getting better or it's getting worse. So I think there's a saying that something happens, says changes happen. Some people call changes something else. Things don't always go the way we want. You still have to keep moving forward. If you can do that when everybody else is panicking and saying, woe is me, then chances are you may have a future in management. So I often tell people nobody likes a whiner. So when there are problems, that's good because that's what you get paid for. You get paid to solve problems. If everything is fine, nobody wants to write you a check. So this one, you're on your own. This was exercise 8 from chapter 1. Write down something about a project that you've either been a part of or you've observed. Write down the steps involved in planning and the steps involved in scheduling. So everybody has done this, if only to put your class schedule together. And your class schedule has not gone as planned. Benefits of critical path method or CPM from the contractor's perspective. Now, we've talked about that. We've been working on it. Oh, there's a typo. I'll have to fix that. So we don't use CPM for all projects. If they're simple, it's probably a lot more work and investment in time and money than we need. We're going to use a simpler method of scheduling. So I think this was the one that we were talking about earlier. Characteristics of a scheduler. We went through that on one of the slides. I will send you the slides. Exercise 12. I told everybody was optional. So you guys want me to bring in a project manager? Is anybody out there?
Do you want us to bring a project manager?
No, I said, do you want me to bring one into one of the class sessions?
Sure.
Oh, sure. I thought you had that experience.
Well, I do, but you know, sometimes you want to listen to somebody else. Don't you get tired of me? La, 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 la. I can't hear what you're saying. So. But no, we can probably bring somebody in. So I know a couple of them. I'll talk to them and see if they're willing to come in and give a presentation in this format.
Just keep your social distance.
Yeah, and if you have somebody that you would like to bring in, you know, using the Zoom, we can do that quite easily, and I can turn them into a co-host or something. So, matter of fact, they can be the host if they want, and I'll just participate. So this was optional. Go talk to somebody, ask them what they do. They may tell you the truth, they may not. Depends on what day you ask them to, you may get a completely different answer. And then this exercise 13 was also optional. Search for an article on critical path method scheduling topic. So everybody know what ENR is? Yay, nay?
Engineering?
That's the Engineering News Record. That's a magazine. Civil Engineering is another magazine. I think I've got one around here somewhere. PM Network magazines. I think I've got a couple of PM Network magazines floating around. So it says avoid scholarly journals. So that's where they use a lot of statistics and calculus to explain things. So, all right. So we're going to take a quick break. I'm going to stop the recording at this point, I think. Where am I? Oh, yeah, there we are. There you are. So you can take a, I don't know, you can take a short break, go use the restroom, have a beer, whatever you're trying to do. Come back. What do you want to cover now? You want to look at chapter 5 next, or you want to look at chapter 4 again?
Did we cover chapter 4?
Yes, we have. We can take a look at chapter 4 very quickly. I'm not going to run the class all night because evidently we need to read chapter 4. But I'll take a short break so you can wake up and run around and do all this, kind of fun stuff. So I got to go see what's going on anyway. So it is, according to my clock somewhere, 7:48. So I will be back at roughly 8 o'clock. And for those of you that see, some of you have already gone somewhere. You're probably out shopping or partying at the beach, trying to get a ticket. I understand they're issuing $1,000 tickets to some people if you're out.
Yes, no
Huh?
surfing allowed.
Yeah, so I don't know. Anyway, I'll be back at 8. Hopefully, I'll see some of you.